Yeah. You already know what time it is. What's up, y'all? What's up, world? It's your boy, man. Mr. The host with the most. Don't need to brag, no boast. All I do is give a toast to the real folks who done paved the way in the real way for us players to play. Yeah, man. I had to come bring y'all another episode of the Mac Mizzle Radio Show. This one right here is called Bot Campaign, man. Yeah, I said it. Bot Campaign. Because it seems like, shit, we out here and the shit is bought and paid for, man. You know what I'm saying? It shouldn't be like that, you know? That's how you know something fishy's going down. They're trying to perpetrate the fraud, you know what I'm saying? I was living in a daze, confused on what's happening out here, you know, but I see it. I see it for what it is. They're trying to steal the election like they stole everything else in this country. People stammering around because this COVID shit. I know where the next meal's gonna come from. You know, I got my kids' cup, so you know it's real in the field. Real. I mean, we're gonna go through this, man. We're gonna go through this. So when I talk about bot campaigns, right? It was said that machines that were in the election were also the same machines that are used in the Bolivian election. So that's some shit, right? Yeah, for real. No joke thing, you know. When it comes to this here ism, we gotta see the game for what it's worth. Almost every state and the Democrats won, and it looks like they stole some votes, man. They made a lot of fraud, you know, fraudulent activities on top of the bots. And they were talking about Russian bots last election. Found no evidence of that. Now they're saying that it couldn't have been no bots. So has me thinking, like, how dare they act like these type of election frauds can't happen, especially the mail-in ballots. So they got people thinking that shit is just gonna go away. Shit ain't going away anytime soon. So you gotta get your mind, body, and soul in tune. First thing they want to implement is a permanent underclass. They're talking about the Nasara, how this great global reset will give countries a different type of way of thinking. But it's more or less an international coup, you know? So as I go through this information with y'all, hope y'all just bear with me. The shit do get sticky. We're gonna go through this real quick. Well, what do y'all think about this whole election? Do you think it's going in the right direction, or something seriously fishy going on? That's for sure. The truth of the matter is, I need to look at that from all aspects and angles. Are there Russian bots? Maybe. We'll just have to find out when the time comes. We'll go ahead and put this on right here for y'all. And you have to see where I'm coming from. Listen. And keep going away. Oh. Wrong room, y'all. Y'all listening right here.
How are social media, the Bolivian election of 2019, and the age of Black Lives Matter all connected? In part one of my propaganda series, you're going to find out. Now, first, let's consider the case of the right-wing bot campaign in the 2019 Bolivian elections. Friends from everywhere. In Bolivia, there was no coup. This is the quote that flooded thousands of social media accounts in the days after left-wing President Evo Morales won a fourth consecutive term as Bolivian president, and the right-wing opposition tried to, well, they did for a time, successfully keep him from assuming the presidency. Bot accounts began spreading confusion about the events surrounding Bolivian President Evo Morales' abrupt resignation and his flight from the country, as he and his supporters were attacked in their homes around the country and the military attempted to take charge. So what exactly is a bot? Bots are tiny computer programs that float around the internet doing things. Companies use them to put positive reviews of their products on message boards or Twitter or Facebook accounts, or respond to customer service requests, among other things. So when these bots began seeding social media and message boards with fake news about Evo Morales' fraudulently stealing the election and saying there was no coup against him, when in fact there was, the major Western news outlets, e.g. the New York Times, CNN, etc., their chatterbots picked up on it. Now, what's a chatterbot? Well, these are yet another set of programs which scour online chatter to discover news in places where the news agencies don't have any reporters. So, say in a small country like Bolivia, there's no one on the ground, but CNN's chatterbots is scouring Twitter, and suddenly this hashtag "there is no coup in Bolivia" pops up in thousands of accounts. They deem it to be real news, right? Because so many people are talking about it. But in fact, it was all just a concerted plan to trick the Western media into telling everyone else a falsehood. Congressional investigations found that bots were used successfully during Donald Trump's 2016 election win. This was the election meddling traced back to Russia that you heard so much about when Zuckerberg and the gods of Google were called in front of Congress a few years ago. So it's 2019 in Bolivia, and Evo Morales, a socialist president under whom poverty was halved in Bolivia during his time, also literacy doubled, and the minimum wage doubled, and he ran for a fourth term. And Now, looking back, we see that Morales won the election by a healthy margin. He got 47% of the vote. And the second place right-wing candidate came in at 38%, which is not really very close. I mean, think about the fact that, say, Biden only beat Trump by, I don't know, 1 or 2%. But this didn't sit well with much of the Bolivian business elite and their American backers. They didn't want Morales, who was at one time ally of Hugo Chavez. Well, maybe he wasn't really an ally. He took money from Venezuela when Chavez was in power. But he's not unhinged like Chavez was. Evo Morales is a guy who kicked the DEA out of Bolivia. So Morales is a guy who was not popular.
Serious dude, just
the Bolivian business
seemed like
American backers.
Trinidad and
led to violent protests in the streets of Bolivia. And shortly thereafter, Morales' right-wing opposition
about Abu Bakr. If you guys look at Trinidad history, Abu Bakr
political party, which eventually
forced the U.S. military out of his country.
In fear and also in the hopes that it would stop the violence, he fled to Mexico. President Donald Trump called Evo Morales' 2019 resignation a, quote, significant moment in the history of Western democracy. Well, yes, in fact it was, but not because it was showing the triumph of democracy, but in fact a temporary victory by the right-wing forces of order to push back against democratic results that they didn't like. We resigned because I don't want to see any more families attacked by instruction of Camacho, Morales said. It is not a betrayal to social movements. The fight continues. We are the people. Many of the right-wing rioters directed their fury at the indigenous peoples of Bolivia. Bolivia is the country in South America with the least European DNA profile. So you might ask, what is the point of simply sowing dissension amongst the population? Well, if you want to impose more social control of any sort onto a population, times of disorder and chaos, buildings burning in the street, crime, riots, unrest around political upheaval, that's when people allow their civil liberties to be eroded. They want someone strong to come in. So while the outcome of some of these social media campaigns would be hard exactly to predict, if you increase social unrest generally, you're always going to see a move to the right, that the population is willing to accept more and more authority and social control. So usually the forces of the status quo, the people that already have power and money, want to make sure that their power and economic position is maintained. By sowing dissension, they can ensure that. Now, there's a history of right-wing coups, specifically in Bolivia, and there was one in the 1960s that it's been proven very rigorously in academia that the CIA was involved in backing it. And then again, in 1980, when Roberto Suarez, the coca baron that the character of Sosa from Scarface was based off of, he had a paramilitary led by Nazi war criminal Klaus Barbie. They were called the Fiancés of Death. And he sort of led a right-wing overthrow of the Bolivian government. Once again, it appears with a lot of, at least, tacit culpability by the United States via the CIA. The American hand in the coup is quite clear. In fact, just a few weeks before the Bolivian election, Bolivian news agency leaked some audio where there were members of the CIA was party involved. That eventually tried to oust Morales temporarily. Talking about a plan to sow dissension amongst the population in case they lost. And on these leaked, secretly recorded audio, there was references to 3 United States congressional members, including Marco Rubio of Florida, you may remember from a failed presidential campaign, and also Ted Cruz of Texas, yet another failed Republican presidential candidate, who apparently had some discussions with the Bolivian right-wing political party about purposely undermining the results of the Democratic election and sowing dissension. And you can kind of see what the Trump people tried to do, and with the tacit or more than tacit support and approval of many in the Republican Party in the aftermath of Biden's clear win, to sow the idea that in fact this was all media manipulation. Humans learn fast, and perhaps we've already learned to not trust social media. So that's, I guess, a good thing. A woman named Janine Áñez declared herself the interim president on November 12th after Morales fled the country. Within her first week, she issued a presidential decree giving security forces full immunity from prosecution for being
Wait a minute. Is he saying that
or assaulting counter-protesters? As news of the right-wing coup reached American shores,
the Trump administration is stealing stole the last election?
on social media that was suspiciously phrased similarly.
Well, they didn't steal this one.
Friends from everywhere in Bolivia, there was no coup. The intent of the coordinated social media campaign seems to be to build support for the right-wing coup in the English-speaking world. But many of the accounts that were talking about political events in Bolivia.
At Walmart, we're continuing our advanced safety protocols so you can feel safe. Learn more at walmart.ca.
That's some serious shit.
Were accounts that were from Virginia. So why have all the places on planet Earth were election results in the little speck of a country called Bolivia be coming out of an American state? Well, what's in Virginia? Langley, CIA headquarters. Now, finally, in November of 2020, Evo Morales was able to return to Bolivia, and politics are kind of going back to normal, or what passes for normal in Bolivia, and the bot-led right-wing coup was uncovered and unraveled primarily.
So are they saying that the Trump campaign, let me get this straight, the Trump campaign
media manipulation kind of unraveled the plot
was accusing them
of
manipulating the votes with bots?
Which is kind of an inconsequential country in the grand scope of the world. If this was going on there, well, then obviously these sorts of things are going on a much larger scale, all over the place all the time, and we don't really know about it. And I'm going to do next a story about something in American social media playing upon, the age of Black Lives Matter, and, people thinking about violence against Black people that goes unchecked and unpunished.
Okay. Now he said that. Now let's go to Sidney Powell when she explains how the bots may have or may not contributed to the corruption in the election fraud. So I'm gonna break this down right quick. So this is the woman responsible for setting in motion the lawsuit against the the media, the global elites, everybody that colluded. So let me show y'all right quick. Yeah.
Welcome to NTD News. I'm Jasmina Davis. Here are today's top stories. The Trump campaign released a statement on Happy Thanksgiving and welcome to NTD News. I'm Jasmina Davis. Here are today's top stories. Attorney Sidney Powell files a lawsuit in Georgia. It alleges massive election fraud as promised last week. The 104-page complaint points to manipulation of Dominion voting software by foreign actors. Sidney Powell also filed a new lawsuit in Michigan. It claims hundreds of thousands of illegal or even purely fictitious ballots helped make Biden's lead possible in this to county election boards by the voter, stating thus at a minimum 96,600 votes must be disregarded. According to this suit, fraud was also allegedly executed by many means. It states the most troubling, however, to be election manipulation by software created and run by domestic and foreign actors for that very purpose. The massive fraud begins with the election software interpret from Dominion voting systems. The complaint cites a former electronic intelligence analyst and a former U.S. military intelligence expert. Both allege that the Dominion system and software were certainly compromised by rogue actors such as Iran and China, who say this took place during the 2020 election. And Sidney Powell also filed a lawsuit in Michigan on Wednesday. It seeks to set aside the results of Michigan's election. Attorney Sidney Powell's Michigan lawsuit repeats the claims of massive election fraud in the state of Michigan as in Georgia, and that it helped make Joe Biden's lead possible in the state. It claims that Michigan state election officials directed the misconduct. It cites eyewitness and expert testimony alleging there were enough ballots identified to overturn and reverse the election results. It also says the state's election was so riddled with fraud that the results can't be relied on. The suit claims that Dominion voting systems helped facilitate the fraud. In addition to Dominion computer fraud, the suit also claims there was traditional voting fraud, including harassment, intimidation, and even physical removal of Republican poll challengers. The lawsuit is filed against Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, and the Michigan Board of State Canvassers. Michigan certified its results on Monday, but Trump lawyer Jenna Ellis said the certification by state officials is only a procedural step. There are 2 pending lawsuits in Michigan. And in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, some neighborhoods reported unusually high election turnout. We break down some of the numbers here.
About 13,000 fewer people voted in Milwaukee, Wisconsin this election compared to 2016. But in several neighborhoods, the number of ballots cast increased dramatically. Based on demographic data from 2010, which is the most recent available, in City Ward 235, over 105% of the eligible voting population cast ballots. It recorded 1,768 votes for Biden and 339 for Trump, but only 1,680 people are eligible to vote there. There are over 2,000 registered voters there, but that doesn't necessarily reflect how many people actually live there. Oftentimes, people don't cancel their registrations when they move. The county spokesman said voter turnout could exceed 100% if there are only a couple of households and a resident turns 18 before Election Day. But that wouldn't apply to this ward, which has a larger population. 4 other wards had a turnout of between 92 to 97%. Altogether, they represent nearly 8,000 votes. Almost 6,000 of them went to Biden. No city ward got above 90% in 2016. And 4 other wards reported massive vote increases. Up to 44% more people voted this year. The increases stand out because the city's overall vote count dropped by nearly 4% compared to 2016. President Trump is contesting the results in Wisconsin, which show Joe Biden ahead by about 20,000 votes. The state's certification deadline is next Tuesday.
A senior research psychologist conducted a large-scale monitoring project on big tech in the days leading up to the 2020 election. The results revealed that companies like Google and Facebook have enormous power to shift people's voting preferences through manipulation of their content.
Dr. Robert Epstein from the American Institute of Behavioral Research and Technology in California claimed on Fox News' Tucker Carlson Tonight that Google alone shifted a bare minimum of 6 million votes in the November 3rd presidential election. The shift was towards the Democrat side. He said a large monitoring project showed Google search results were strongly biased in favor of liberals and Democrats. This was not true on Bing or Yahoo. Epstein explained the project in an interview on the Epoch Times American Thought Leaders program. His project team recruited a diverse group of 733 registered voters, Republicans, Democrats, and independents, from 3 very critical battleground states, Arizona, Florida, and North Carolina. It looked at their search activity on the internet in the days leading up to the election, using special software that allowed the team to see what they saw as though looking over their shoulder. The content the users were shown while searching revealed political bias. Epstein said he also found what he calls a smoking gun, that liberals were receiving a reminder to go out and vote, while conservatives weren't. That is, we found a period of days when the vote reminder on Google's homepage was being sent out only to liberals. Not one of our conservative field agents received a vote reminder during those days.
The Pennsylvania State Senate held a public hearing on election issues in Gettysburg. Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis from the Trump team, as well as Pennsylvania legislatures and witnesses, laid out their case in detail. NTD's Christina Kim has the details.
I think they have something
up their sleeve. In the historic city Gettysburg, Pennsylvania officials gathered at the Wyndham Hotel to hold a public hearing regarding legal issues in the state's election.
Section 1.
Giuliani spoke first, saying the election is run by no one other than the state legislature. He quoted Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the Constitution, which laid out this designation.
So they're going to battle it out in court.
Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors. It's the state legislature that controls this process. It's your power. It's your responsibility.
Leah Hoops is a Delaware County resident. She was a poll watcher on election night and was at the counting center in Chester, Pennsylvania. Hoops said one of her greatest concerns was the back room of the counting center, which had no observers and no line of sight. She said there was no cooperation between poll watchers and poll workers, and even felt resistance from the workers.
Even with an injunction, which was a joke, we were granted 5 minutes every 2 hours. And the setup was sitting in a chair 20 feet from any physical ballot.
Colonel Phil Waldron is a psychological operations officer in information and electronic warfare. He said his team has been studying voting machine manipulations since 2018. Waldron said the voting systems used in this election were built to be manipulated and were used in stolen elections around the world in Venezuela, Argentina, Italy, and Singapore. Referring to this year's vote data, he spoke of spike anomalies, which are events where the numerical amount of votes processed in a time period is not feasible or mechanically possible under normal circumstances. This is based off a specified rate of speed at which these machines can process or image ballots.
Yes. And when you look at this entire curve with all these spikes, can you calculate how much of a vote that accounted for Biden and how much for Trump?
Close to 600,000. I think our figures are about 570 some odd thousand that all those spikes represented over time.
For Biden.
Correct.
And how much for Trump?
I think it was a little over 3,200.
Olivia Jane Winters, a minority poll inspector, also gave her testimony.
I'm actually I'm a registered Democrat, and I just wanted to help and make sure it was a fair election. I don't care who wins. I care that it's a fair election.
Winters said she was immediately met with hostility from all of the workers. When someone tried to return a mail-in ballot and vote in person, this required a signature from the judge of elections. But the judge of elections, who was not supposed to leave the building, had gone home for 45 minutes. Winters was confronted by a poll watcher and committee man who told her anyone could sign the affidavit and began to admonish her, saying,
why don't you stop trying to cause problems? Why don't you shut up? Started getting in my face, cursing at me, telling me that I needed to be quiet, that I didn't know what I was talking about, and I should just learn to sit down and not say anything. and just let it happen.
Others
Wow.
testified as well,
Imagine
citing
that.
anomalies like USB sticks in voting machines. A poll watcher said that more than 2 is unusual, and while officials deny the allegations, 47 are currently missing. Another said that stacks of hundreds of blank mail-in ballots were used to fix ballots that could not be read. Nobody was there to oversee this. Senator Doug Mastriano concluded the public hearing by saying the truth is out there. He said that history was changed in 1863 in Gettysburg, so on this day, history is changing for our country and this state, back at Gettysburg once again. Christina Kim, NTD News.
Senator Argos.
So what does that tell y'all, man? They got a mountain of evidence, but they won't never say it in the mainstream media because it's all collusion, you know? It's all a part of a bigger scheme because there's a lot of things going on. We just recently, there's flights. There was a flight from Miami to Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. People don't go to Guantanamo Bay to go on vacation. I'll tell you that much. So what was the flight to Guantanamo Bay about? There was a few flights in the past week. So there's a lot of things to look at. Simultaneously, as well as this whole pandemic, where they're trying to push the vaccine out to us. You know? Eventually, we're gonna have to take it. I guess the performance society, you know, just like a hospital worker, and their shots, you know. So that's what I wanted to tell y'all tonight. It's a bot campaign. You know, this technology has been going on. We've been using it in different countries, perfecting it, and actually they did it under the guise of protecting their democracy. Watch, that'll be the new campaign. We're bringing back the democracy and all this bullshit. But if you're a real thinking individual, you know that Joe Biden didn't win no election. He could barely stand up straight. I realized that it was just a rush election. They didn't know who to put up against Trump. And they had to do something quick, so they stole the election. Simple. So you're going to see it's going to go play out in the Supreme Court with the Senate because they're going to vote against the fraud. There's an ample amount of evidence. And that's what it is. So it's where Mac Mizzle. You already know my slogan. Keep it real in the field. Fuck out of here, Phil. I'm out. Peace.